This week's guest has come hot foot from Moonbase Alpha via General Hospital and The Saint. His theatre work includes forming the Carib Theatre Company, specialising in theatre and education and telling stories from a black perspective. His work as an actor, director and producer led him to be awarded the 2015 Edric Connors Trailblazer Award. But to help us celebrate Breakaway Day, he's here to tell us more about life as Space 1999's Dr. Bob Matthias and beyond. It's Anton Phillips! Anton, how lovely to see you around the table for the Gerry Anderson Podcast.
Thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful. And welcome to Slough.
That's the first time I've heard that.
Not a million miles away from Pinewood Studios.
No, it isn't.
Where you spent your year on Space 1999 and beyond. We've had lots of illustrious guests on the podcast over the last 5 years, from John Coleshaw to Chris Packham to Samira Ahmed, who I think you've also spoken to. But it's always exciting to have someone on the show who was there during the filming of one of Gerry's series. Now, you've come a long way to get here, and I don't just mean the trouble that you had with the tubes this morning.
Yes, I got to my train station and the railings were across the front of it, and rail replacement bus service was which then throws you into London traffic for a start.
Yeah, yes.
That's having had to wait 10, 15 minutes for the bus to arrive.
Well, thank you for persevering.
And so on. Yeah.
You made it. But like I say, a journey it's been from your childhood in Jamaica via high school in Washington, D.C.,
That's
I think.
right, yes.
And then to the UK. So looking back, does it ever seem like an unlikely journey?
Well, it really is very weird, because when you grow up in Jamaica, especially if you're sort of a middle-class person in Jamaica, you're expected to go into one of the professions. You know, you're expected to become a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or into the civil service.
Yeah.
But when I said, I want to go I want to be an actor, people said, that's nice, but what do you really want to do?
Are they still saying that now?
I think they probably are still saying that now. Except I think some of us who've been into the profession and have done reasonably well and are kind of role models back in Jamaica has opened up the door to the possibilities that other people are saying, oh, well, you know.
Wonderful.
It's not as closed as I thought it was, or people lead me to believe.
Absolutely. But so who opened the door for you? Who are your role models, or didn't you have them?
Well, I didn't really have any. I mean, I left Jamaica and went to school in America. I went to high school in D.C., as you said, and then went to the RCA radio school in New York and did a broadcasting course. I went back to Jamaica and did a bit of broadcasting there and some radio plays and so on. But I'd always belonged to some kind of amateur theatre group.
Right.
So, in fact, I think I actually formed a group in Jamaica of my own.
Great.
And then decided that really none of my ambitions, whatever they were going to be fulfilled in Jamaica. So I went back to America. Unfortunately, the Vietnam War was raging at the time, and the American government were gently recruiting.
Right, yes.
Lots of young men of my age, and I thought, well, you know what, I have nothing against the Vietnamese.
Sure.
So I'm leaving.
Right.
So I left and came to the UK, to Britain.
Now, what was your ambition, or what were perhaps your parents' ambitions for you at that early stage in Jamaica? At
that point, they didn't really care, as long as I did something.
Sure.
Because I seemed to be quite aimless at the time and so on. So, you know, they'd be quite happy for me to go to university and study anything, as long as I did something.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's while I was here, because I came over here with the idea that I just toured around Europe for a while. But I came to England, and England struck me as being so different to the American experience that I had, and obviously the Jamaican experience.
Right.
That it really engaged my interest quite a lot. Yeah. We're talking about the days when the Beatles and the Stones were, and that whole change. I mean, I don't know if people, generations after that, realize what a sea change went through Britain at that time.
And it was tangible, was it? You could sense
absolutely,
it.
Absolutely, yes. And people were making a particular effort just to break with the traditional past. Yeah, that's when the teenager emerged in Britain. Before that, they were just young people. They weren't called teenagers.
Sure.
This is a strange idea which came over from America. Yeah. And this sense of freedom kind of broke loose. So, I mean, I arrived and there were young men walking down the street wearing bright red military tunics from the 19th century, with very long hair and dark, and long hair. In America, if you didn't have a crew cut, you're considered a deviant.
Absolutely, yes, quite right. Yeah, interesting. I mean, and also, I suppose, from our point of view, also pushing the boundaries at the time was Gerry Anderson, who was forging ahead with his sort of super marination process.
That's right.
The puppets
that's
and stuff.
right.
Now, we're going to play a very quick game with you, Anton,
Okay.
that we play with all our guests. We're going to show you some very quick clips from the opening titles of every one of Gerry's series, and we want to see just how many you can spot.
Wow.
Okay, you ready for this?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So, early days to begin with.
This looks like, is this Stingray is what I was going to say.
Close, yeah.
This is, I can't remember the names. I'd recognize them. I'm not doing really well here.
It's all right. It's difficult to keep up. Now, you may recognise that one.
I thought we were just doing the first 5. Thunderbirds, yes.
Yes, that's it.
Is that Stingray, I guess, is it?
Captain Scarlet.
I forgot about him
That's
altogether.
all right.
And this is, I don't know that one.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Now we're moving into live action.
These are really quick.
They're very quick.
That one I recognize.
Of course you do. I'll give you that one.
And this is Thunderbirds.
Oh, no, we've had Thunderbirds already.
Oh, you're not doubling them up. Wow.
Almost
16,
there.
20.
Into the 90s now. Very, very quick. Last couple.
Right across the universe.
Nope.
Okay. There we go. Well,
Not very good.
very difficult. Very,
Not
very difficult.
good.
Just a bit of fun.
It's amazing because some of those go back quite a few years, and
Sure.
yeah, and even if you recognise it, what was the title of that again?
Yes, absolutely. A lot
And
of
then
it's kind
there's
of...
some sort of similarities with some of the animation ones. I
Yeah,
think, as
yeah.
well.
All buried away in there, but as sort of a jumble, isn't it? That's the
Yes,
thing.
and they fly by pretty quickly. you know.
I know, we're not very fair. I know. It's just a bit of fun. It's nothing serious at all. But
At the end of your series, you should see who the winner is, who spotted the most of them in the given time.
funny you should say that.
Funny. Okay.
So we have 2 for you, Anton. There you are in your Thunderbirds outfit. So they're all ranged across the front of the table here. I think the winner at the moment is Lee Sullivan, who's a comics illustrator who got 18.
18.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive.
It's very impressive. But there we are. Not bad at all. Not bad at all.
Well, that's better than 1 and 0.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, you were always bound to get 1, weren't you?
Yes.
So, I mean, were you watching television as a young child? Did you have a TV in the family?
There wasn't television in Jamaica.
Right. When did it come to Jamaica?
Well, I was in America when I came to Jamaica. I'm pretty sure. No, the first television I saw was when I arrived in Miami.
Yeah.
I took a plane from Jamaica to Miami as a 13-year-old, I think.
Yeah. On your own?
On my own,
Right.
yes. Because my parents had by then gone to the States.
I see.
So I was going up to join them and stopped off in Miami. And in the airport, there's a television, and it was showing a Roy Rogers.
Great.
Not a film, because it was a television series. And
I
it was
see.
an episode of that. And that was the first television I ever saw.
And it obviously left a mark. You can
Yes.
remember that. Yeah. Wow.
Well, you've been reading about television and you've seen it in films and everything else.
Yeah.
It's like roller coasters. I never saw a roller coaster until I went to America. And then these...
Yeah. I remember having my first avocado when I was 24. Things like that.
Yeah.
So, no television. Almost impossible to believe for a lot of our viewers, I'm sure, and listeners.
yes.
So, what did you spend your time doing as a young
Well,
child?
radio was a big part of it, and the World Service. BBC World Service was... Because they broadcast... that famous detective show, the name escapes me at the moment. I think Meg Ray.
Meg Ray, yes.
I think there was a radio broadcast.
Okay.
And various other drama productions,
Right.
and the news and
Yeah.
different kind of calling the Caribbean or calling the West Indies.
I
some
see.
special shows direct. So and then there's local radio as well.
Uh-huh.
So radio was that, but otherwise you're outside.
Yeah, of
making
course.
your own entertainment.
Of
and
course, yeah.
meeting friends and going off and
Yeah.
doing things.
Great. Now it's time to have a look at your first Anderson memory, which of course is something very personal to you. So we'll have a look at this and have a chat about it afterwards. Okay.
I can make it.
Good, Captain.
Check out the base. This is main mission. All sections report.
Security section. We have audio contact. Radio systems down. Service section. Lost all power. Operating on emergency systems.
Medical section, Paul. Explosive decompression in 2 compartments. Areas sealed off. No leaks. Sufficiently operational to accept casualties.
There we go. So,
Oh, he was so young.
so we're fast forwarding a little bit. I know to your first day, I think, on Space 1999.
Yes,
Is that
yes.
right? That scene.
And I just listened to that line. I thought, God, I said that, and sounded as if I knew what I was talking about. What's more,
How does it feel watching yourself on
it's
screen?
really weird because how many years am I looking back?
Yeah,
here?
40 years or so, isn't
yeah.
it? Yeah. Yeah. And how did that come to you? I guess you auditioned for it. Your agent put you up for it.
No, in those days, theatre, there's a kind of explosion in fringe theatre.
Yeah.
So you could go to any pub almost, or any telephone box, or almost anything, and see a play. And I was in a play at the King's Head Theatre at lunchtime.
Yeah.
A lunchtime play.
Yeah.
And I was in there with another actor who was one of the blue-eyed boys of the BBC. Had been in some major series and so on, who was also a friend of mine, actually. And Michael Barnes, a casting director from Space,
Yes.
came to see him. And there we were in this really weird play. Nobody knew what the play was about, including the director, or if the director knew what it was about, he wasn't telling us. But we just got on and did it and had a great time. And afterwards, Michael Barnes came up to me and introduced himself, and said, he'd love me to come and meet Sylvia Anderson at Pinewood Studios for this series they're doing. And I thought, sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds okay.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think either the next day or the day after, I made my way to Pinewood Studios. Met him. He introduced me to Sylvia.
Yeah.
Who greeted me very warmly, and as was always the case with her. She was just such a terrific person to have on that set, on that sound studio.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, come in. They'd want me to do it. So I had a costume fitting and so
Right.
on, and then subsequently went in and did that first episode there.
Now, what was that? It sounds like such a big step for an actor to go from appearing at the King's Head, perfectly decent venue, nothing wrong with that at all, to be cast in 24 episodes. I think you did in that first year.
Well,
did it feel like a big deal?
Well, at the beginning, I was just cast to do the one, just that one,
Right.
And then the director was Lee Katzen. The next day, apparently, they saw the rushes, liked what they saw, and then invited me to do the rest.
I see.
It was also, funny because for that shot, for that scene, as we were standing by before he shouted action, I started doing some heavy breathing as if, there's all hell breaking loose
Chaos
around
around,
me and
yes.
everything else. So I was standing up there and the wings building up, and I saw him looking at me, thinking, what have we got here?
Now that, if you don't mind me saying, that's very much a theatre actor's response, isn't it?
Quite possibly.
Did you
I guess.
take those skills purposefully into your TV acting, or did it feel like a different beast entirely?
Well, the funny thing is, when you go to drama school in Britain, they teach you to act in theatre. Certainly at that time, they teach you. Certainly not the one I went to. Nothing at all about film or television or studio. So it was a brand new thing. The very first telly I ever did, I pitched up on the set, having got the part, and knew my lines and everything, and this is on the deck of a ship,
Yes.
warship. And the director said, okay, let's go for that first shot. There's your mark. And I was going, what? Aren't we going to talk about character, backstory? You know, what's my relationship with the theatrical approach? And no, we'll do a rehearsal. I thought, we'll rehearse for the camera.
Yes, a rehearsal for the camera. Now, I think that would surprise a lot of people watching, that in the world of TV, you get very little rehearsal at all. You might get a chat with the director if you're lucky, but you're really expected to turn up, say the lines.
Yeah, with a character in your pocket, and and move on. And certainly, in terms of asking the director about character motivation and so on, he isn't interested. He just wants to know, is the shot set up right? And so the answer to the question is, it was a big learning experience. I'd never been, because even that television, which might have been the one and only one I did before Space 1999. I'd never been on a soundstage.
Sure.
So I didn't know my way around it.
And at Pinewood, of all places.
And Pinewood.
What did that mean to you? Were you familiar with its history? And
of course, yes. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd seen all those, because the Hammer films were shot there, weren't they?
I think they were at Bray, I think.
Were they Bray? Yes.
But the Bond movies and Carry On films, of course.
Yes, and the great thing, of course, is hanging around those Pinewood. You see, the Michael Caines and the Sidney Poitiers coming in, and people like this, and you go,
extraordinary.
Wow. But you don't want to go up to him because now you're cool, right? I'm not going.
So try to take it in your stride.
Yes.
So can you remember your actual first moment on set? Did you meet on that first day the likes of Martin Landau, Barbara Bain, or was it just the people you were involved with in the scene?
Because your call is 7:15 in the morning or something like that, and you're going to makeup and costumes and everything else, and then you might be needed until 10 o'clock. So you use the chance to go on the set, meet people, and you are introduced around as well. And it might even have been Sylvia taking me around, saying, this is Martin and so on. I remember when Martin heard my character name, he was really quite startled. He said, "What are you called?" I said, "Bob Matthias." He said, No, we can't have a character called Bob Matthias because there's an Olympian, a famous Olympian named Bob Matthias."
Really?
Yeah. And he said, "No, that name's from this." And he left the stage and obviously went and spoke with I don't know, Gerry or somebody to see if they could get a name change, but they didn't.
No, blame
So
it not.
there I was, yes.
Now, coming from I suppose a theatre background to begin with, I know you're subsequently very experienced in TV as well, but theatre is generally considered to be a company feel. Did you feel that on set as well for Space?
Well, on this set certainly you did. Even though in theatre you tend to. Theatre is also not that company feel that you, but it's a much smaller geographical area that you usually cover. Because the soundstage at Pinewood Studio, you could park Concorde in it. Or a 747 or something. It's huge and big sets and different and then sometimes two sound stages in operation. With the administrative offices and changing rooms and wardrobes and so on in the front. So that closeness physically doesn't happen. Yeah. But somehow that whole group of people seemed to coalesce really quite well. And everyone, I've been on sets where, you walk on and the regulars, you're there as a guest artist, and the regulars, they don't even look in your direction, much less come over and say hi, welcome, and so on. Which has really shocked me at times. I mean, that doesn't always happen, but it certainly does happen, where you walk and no one takes the slight bit of interest in you.
Yeah, particularly if they know you're a day player, you're only there for one scene.
Whereas I don't think that was ever the case on Space 1999. Certainly not in the year one, anyway.
Yeah, great. Now, we have given the opportunity to our viewers and listeners to send in some questions for you, Anton, which are placed in this rather fetching Space 1999 lunchbox, of course, in your honour. So I wonder if you could just reach in there and just take a question.
This one.
Let's see what they've had to say.
This is from Tabitha Hoop. Why do you believe shows like Space 1999 have such longevity and still manage to draw in younger fans. I haven't the faintest idea.
Because they do, you know. Do you see that yourself? I know you go to conventions often.
Yes, I've
Do you
been
see
to
younger-
conventions, and the most amazing thing to me about it is that there are people there who weren't even born when Space 1999 was made.
Yeah.
And they're there, and they're in costume.
Yeah.
And they're really enthusiastic fans.
Yeah.
And, people will come up to me and say, gosh, if it wasn't for Space 1999, I wouldn't have done a science degree, or I wouldn't have gone into medicine, or some things like that. People do say that. And looking back at the shows, I think, well, let's have a look back. And even then, I find it difficult to connect with this show, which was made however many years ago, with today.
Right. Really.
Yeah, which would encourage them, because the making of science fiction these days, sci-fi films, has changed in tone so much.
Yeah.
If you take a film like Aliens, for instance, the ship, it's creaky, the guys are wearing sweaty work clothes, they're arguing, it's a working environment. Yeah, it's not pristine and clean cut and everything else like space is.
Yes.
So that shift in presentation and production values and so on, I'd have thought would make Space 1999 look a little bit dated.
No, well, you see, that's interesting, because I grew up watching Space 1999, which is why it's such a thrill to have you here today. To me, it looked like the future. All these grimier, grittier sci-fi films that we watched, it looked like today, but a few years hence.
Right.
Space 1999 to me looked like the future. Clean, white, bright, and with that a kind of sense of optimism, although the Alphans went through some terrible things. Just that idea of progression and hopefulness seemed to me to be symbolised by the design, the brightness. That's what attracted me.
And I suppose also there's a kind of step away from the reality of our current situation here as well, which is at the moment so depressing anyway.
Quite right, yes.
You step into that, and there's a world which is functioning. I mean, they've got their problems and so on.
Yeah, but everything works.
But they make it work.
That's right.
So maybe that's it.
Yeah. Take another question.
Another
Let's
question.
See, who else has got in touch? That's it.
This is from Alex Pass.
Oh, yes.
Space 1999 has been enjoying recent repeat broadcasts in the UK. Have you been tempted to take a look? Well, the recent ones have been mainly Series 2, I think.
Right.
And yes, I've watched one or two of them. Not all of them by any means. And fortunately, every time I've dipped into it, it's an episode which I'd never seen before.
Ah, okay. Yes.
So the last one, I might even have been last week. Maybe knowing that I was coming here, I thought, oh, there it is, let me have a look.
And how does it strike you?
Ooh. We're entering into Series 1 stroke Series 2 competition. I'm not impressed with Series 2, to be perfectly honest with you. I think the scale of the whole thing was reduced so much.
Yeah.
It lost that sense of space and being on the moon, and you're in this little closet, main mission control.
Yes.
And then the monster which appeared in this thing. There are two monsters which appeared in it. There are the aliens which are messing things up on Alpha, and then what's her name? Who changes?
Maya. Catherine Shell.
Yes.
Yes.
She changes into another monster to counter them, and so on.
Yeah, a definite shift in tone for sure.
Shift in tone, but they were such rubbish monsters. I mean, I suppose, in the days when we didn't have CG, and all of that, where you can do such amazing things with monsters now and so on. Now, those monsters, some of them looked like cardboard boxes which had lots of
Pretty much were, I should imagine.
Bits of blankets stuck to them.
Exactly.
Hanging down.
Cheap, though, you see, cheap. Take one last question, Anton, if you would.
But that's the interesting thing, because there wasn't anything about Series 1 which looked cheap.
No, you're absolutely
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
And here we have a question from Ian Stevens. Are you aware that the shows are still popular today? And does that surprise you? On a personal note, Space 1999 and UFO have been so helpful, getting me through the personal issues I've had by giving me much needed break from reality. Well, that sort of hinges on what we're speaking.
That's right.
The conversation we just had.
Yeah. What's it like to be part of something that has a real legacy that's sort of beyond your control? I mean, it's going to outlive you, isn't it?
It is, yes.
How does that feel?
I feel as already has done. Well, it's one of the interesting things is when I meet people, and eventually it comes out, because I don't meet people and say, I was in Space 19. Yeah,
sure.
But it might come out at some stage.
Yeah.
And they sort of look at me in shock to think, wow, probably they're thinking, oh, I thought all you guys were dead. But just recently I met up with Clifton.
Yes.
Clifton Jones.
Yeah.
And he said, look, I know that this woman who would love to meet you. Is it all right if I tell her to come along to the pub that we meet up and have a drink? And I said, yes, sure. So she came along, and this was a woman in her 40s, I guess. And she was so pleased to meet me. This was a black woman.
Yeah.
And she said, that you and Clifton, when she was growing up, were the only things that they had to watch on television which promoted a positive image of black people. We weren't playing janitors or pimps or gangsters or anything like that. There was this computer expert and there was a doctor. And, they used to run downstairs to watch when we were on. And she just really wanted to meet me and thank me.
Amazing.
For that experience of her youth.
Amazing. And I know that's an area you went on to explore in your theatre work, which we'll talk later about, bringing black stories to the screen and to the stage as well. Right,
absolutely, yes.
But before we get there, I'm going to take you right back to the beginning. I think this is from 1973. You've mentioned it already. It's an episode of Warship in which you featured, and the episode title is Sub Smash. Have a look at this.
She's only up there, about 100 yards away. How long does it take to run 100 yards? You watched the Olympics, did you?
9.25 seconds.
Oh, any marvellous familiarisation trick.
Where's your sense of humour, Connie? It's now we need it. Bloody cold.
Well, a few minutes ago you were too bloody hot. I could put that on. There's dozens up there. You could put one on. We could be out of here long here in 5 minutes.
You told us to wait.
Yeah.
And what about him? Do we leave him behind? And do you know how to use that thing? Because I don't.
Yeah, but it's all in here.
Yeah, and something goes wrong. We flood this compartment. They'll never get up.
Yeah, well, the way the water came here, there's a hole 2 yards wide. And here I ain't going to patch that with a metal plate.
Oh, the water would have come in quicker.
Now, listen, I know the score. There could be every shit in the med come to help us. But I can't do nothing. No, he knows that. But he's pig-headed. He'll leave it to the last minute, and then we'll all get up in an orderly manner.
A very committed and focused performance, I think.
Well, I'd like to think all my performances are like
and indeed they are. Yes. But this was your first TV.
That was my very first TV, done on location, as I said, which was, the Royal Navy had put one of their frigates at our disposal.
Yeah.
And so it was filmed down in Portsmouth, in the naval yard in Portsmouth, and then we went sailing around the harbour. In fact, for that episode, the weather was so bad, because normally we'd have gone out to sea,
yes,
as I understand it. But the weather was so bad, we could only sail around in the harbour for those shots.
Wow.
And we were supposed to be in Gibraltar, I think.
Right.
So, sleeves rolled up, and
Yes.
except it's January in Portsmouth in bad weather.
Amazing.
There are times when, all that was filmed in studio. That was filmed in a tank
Yeah.
in Ealing.
Right. A nice tight little scene. In a way, very theatrical. It's a nice little two-hander, isn't it?
Well, the setup is that we're cut off from the rest of the sub.
Yes.
And this other sailor, he wants to use the escape pod.
Yeah.
But has no idea how to use it.
Yeah.
And I'm following orders. They say, stay where you are, stay calm.
Yeah.
Help is on its way. So it's a conflict between them. So that, once we're in the sub, we're cut off.
Yeah.
In this, because the sub hits an old World War II mine.
Right.
And is disabled.
Right.
And so the for that, in fact, it's a memorable scene because, as I said, we're in a tank in Ealing, dressed up to look like the inside of a submarine, and standing up there is a guy with a huge fire hose blasting us with water to simulate the leak.
Amazing.
And we do the
Wow.
whole scene up to our knees in water, for like 2 or 3 days, whatever long it took to film that.
How incredible. So that was actually broadcast on the 19th of July, so just a little over 50 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, that's right. Extraordinary, isn't it? Now, so your first TV, but did you have a sense of momentum, or have you never had that sense? Because I know as an actor, it's hustling a lot of times.
Yes.
But did you feel a sense of momentum getting your first TV job? And
Well, you see, I was very fortunate, I think. The drama school I went to, it shows you the changing times, basically. The drama school I went to would only take 2 non-white students for any annual intake, for the year intake. 1 black girl, 1 black boy.
Right.
And the reasoning for that was that there wasn't any work out there, so there's no point training up a whole bunch of us and sending them out into a period of constant unemployment.
so rather than trying to drive change
Absolutely.
by having more black
maintain
students.
the status, yes. But when I got out of drama school, after I got my first job, which I had to wait probably a couple of months before I got my first job, which was up in the Belgrade Theatre in Coventry.
Yeah.
Once that happened, then jobs for me rolled in.
Yeah.
Dovetailed. Sometimes I was doing a telly and a stage play, or
Amazing.
2 tellies. And I was thinking, I have colleagues, from the Caribbean, from Africa, who are also actors, who were having a hard time getting work. And I was, I've just come into the business, and I'm getting work left, right, and centre.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, what's what are they complaining about? It's okay.
Yeah.
But it was okay for me. I think I was lucky.
It's tempting to think it's always like that, isn't it? That's the thing, when work is coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, going on to this and the other, curiously though, almost every telly which I ever did, probably except for that first one, I played a doctor.
Right. There you go.
I played a number of doctors.
Yeah, funny, isn't it?
And every time I got a doctor's part, I go and see my own physician and say, well, this patient is suffering from such and such. How would you as a doctor and get some notes from that?
Great. Now, that sound, Anton, means it's time for Quick Fire 5. Now, I'm going to ask you 5 quick fire questions. No right or wrong answer, but you need to pick either of the answers I give you. Are you ready for these?
Yes.
Now, what would interest you more? Diving to the sea depths as in Warship, or exploring strange new worlds aboard Moonbase Alpha?
Oh, the latter, I think.
Oh, really? Space?
Yes, absolutely.
Ah.
Yeah.
Pick a holiday. Beneath the swaying palms of Thunderbirds' Tracy Island, or the English countryside of Gerry's series The
You don't need to
Secret
go any
Service?
further. The seaside.
Of course, it has to be. A year working at Pinewood, or a year working on stage?
Stage.
Really? Great. You're on the moon as it blasts away, but what would you take? The complete works of Shakespeare, or a month's worth of meals from your favourite restaurant?
Shakespeare, I think.
And finally, you have to choose a colour from the Dulux paint range and become a Spectrum agent from Captain Scarlet. So, are you Captain Kiwi Crush or Lieutenant Mint Macaroon?
Ooh. I'm not sure what those two are, but the Kiwi Crush sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's your Quick Fire 5, Anton. Now, a podcast viewer recently posted a picture on our Facebook group, which is to highlight the diversity of the cast of Space 1999. Do you think that's a fair comment, and were you aware of it at the time?
Well, to the diversity of the cast.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fair comment because, casting certainly at that time was very white. And, apart from myself and Clifton, there's Xenia, for instance. And then, the Italians coming in as well as special guests. And that.
Yeah.
So that did make a difference. But I do think it had an effect on how much we had to do. Certainly if you look at the series, all of us had episodes devoted to some particular crisis which we are concerned at, whether it was Prentice Hancock or Nick Tate or Xenia, come to that. But if you look at it, there isn't a single episode in those 24 episodes which either involve Clifton or myself carrying the main storyline.
So still a long way to go at that point.
It was, yes.
I mean, I suppose it's a line that ends perhaps happily in the world of Star Trek with the first black captain of Deep Space Nine.
Right, yes.
But still in the 70s, struggling to get that recognition.
And I think it might have something to do with where they're going to be selling the series onto. I think they certainly had an eye on, certainly the American market principally. And having, strong storylines with black characters wasn't necessarily, at the time, the most compelling requirement.
In an ideal world for you, Anton, I'm interested in this. Would the ultimate goal be to cast black actors in, obviously, major roles, leading roles, without race even being a question?
And it's happening now. There's a series where it really is startling in that sense, called The Great, about Catherine the Great of Russia, which is a period piece for a start. And they cast right across any kind of racial line. So some of the Russian aristocrats are cast as black people or cast as Indians, or with no reference being made to color or appearance or anything. They're just cast as actors. And it really is, it's startlingly refreshing to see that.
And likewise Bridgerton as well, a series you might be really big on Netflix. And that seems to have come from theatre, which is a little more colourblind, you might think. I know, again, not ideal, but certainly the trend these days, and the right trend, is to cast actors on their merits and not on the colour of their skin.
Yes, I mean, certainly that's happening. And recent things that have happened, especially in America, have prompted that move. The George Floyd,
that's right,
incident.
Murder, not incident.
That whole movement which came out of that has forced people to stop and think about what they're doing and how they're doing it. But having said that, one of the things which I discovered is that the theatre establishment in this country is a seriously conservative establishment. It resists change, which I discovered. And I say theatre, but it also extends into the film and television industry. So that certainly there are parts which I went up for which required a black man, and I'd walk in the room and I wasn't black enough as I stepped through the door. You could just see, thank you for coming. They could have said that before I opened my mouth or anything.
What a nonsense, isn't it, really?
Now that I think is probably loosening up a bit. But still a way to go.
Now, I asked you in our brief email exchange beforehand to provide me with your favourite moment. So let's have a look at that and have a chat about what you picked. and off we go.
Well, if
Breakaway.
you're doing that today,
Yeah.
you couldn't improve on that, could you?
I agree, absolutely. It's a really effective sequence, isn't it?
Yeah, look at those I mean, that can't be improved on. That's, and then the response to the explosion and people being thrown all around the place and so on.
It.
I mean, really very, very good.
I mean, it's a nice metaphor, isn't it? Because it's the beginning of an epic journey for the characters. And also, you might say, a beginning of something of a journey for the cast as well.
Yes,
for that first year at Pinewood.
Yeah. And, well, I was just going to say, also, it just sets up the series so nicely as well.
Yeah.
And creates because of this huge catastrophe which happens, it brings everybody together on so we have this common goal, survival.
Yes.
Which lends it this kind of warmth, and even though the set and the design and everything is all clean cut and hard edged in a way. The group, the cast, the storylines, and everything else, I think, kind of emphasizes and stresses the camaraderie-ness of the people.
It's a story about humanity, ultimately, for me, as a viewer. I remember that very clearly. Now, Chris Dale, who also appears on the podcast, had a question for you about, he was saying that whenever anything bad happened on Moonbase, Dr. Matthias was always the first to be smashed over the head or thrown through a plate glass window. Why was that? How did that feel?
I don't know.
Did you do many of those stunts yourself, or
no? I had a wonderful stuntman called Paul Weller. I think his name was, certainly Paul anyway. And he was a taller guy, bigger than me, white as well.
Right.
But by the time he came out of makeup, my then wife, did a couple of episodes of Space 1999.
Oh yes.
And she was in one where I can't remember what the disaster was I was facing, but Paul was there, made up as me, and I said to him, "Look, over there's my wife. Go over and say hello to her and see." He went over to her and bent down to kiss her on the cheek, and she sort of went, and it took a moment before she registered that it wasn't actually me.
How funny!
But no, he did all my stunts. I mean, I'd start off something like that fight with Nick.
Ah yes.
And then drop out of shot, and he would come in.
I see.
And Nick's stuntman would come in, and then
you'd sit back and watch with a cup of tea.
We'd sit back and watch it. Yes.
Series 2. So what happened? A couple of episodes for you.
Yes. Money. Plain and simple. They invited me to come back. I didn't realize that they were actually whittling down the cast or anything.
Right.
But they invited me to come back and offered me the same money.
Right.
I thought, hang on, they're not paying me that much to start off with.
Right. Yeah.
So we went into negotiation. My agent said, "Look, we need such and such," and they said, "No, you can have the same." And so that took over a couple of episodes. We were negotiating during those first two episodes.
I see.
And by the time it got to the end of the second, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go off and do something anyway. I'm going to... Right. Because having... the funny thing is, when I did the 24 episodes of Series 1, which took about a year out of my career, as it were. It's theatrical. It was going lovely. Jobs were coming in and so on, building up a reputation. Then went into Space 99 and disappeared off the stage.
Sure. Suddenly you're not available, are you?
I'm not there.
I see.
And I then even learned, after Space was finished and everything else, some friend of mine said, I went up for such and such a part, and they said, we've been trying to get hold of Anton Phillips. Do you know, and they were told Anton Phillips has left. He's gone to live in America.
Oh, right, okay.
I wasn't even in the country. Never mind.
Wow.
And I just thought, the thing is, when we did Space, it was like 6 months before it was shown here in Britain. So there's this long gap. So it's not even I was back in any kind of public viewing or. So I thought, no, let me go back to concentrate on theatre and picking up again and re-establishing.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and also having then done 2 episodes and seeing the change in the whole atmosphere of the place. That lovely family feeling and the loss of Barry and and others. And I just thought it's not the same thing.
Now, what do you put that down to? Because there was a change in the production staff,
Yes,
of course.
I think it probably came from
from the top.
From the top.
Yeah.
Yes. Fans. It's a huge controversial thing as to whether this American producer who was brought in was responsible for putting the kind of doom on it.
Yeah. Now, before we get to some more viewers' questions, just like last week, and talk about your theatre work, just a look again at another piece of TV. This is, I think it's from about 40 years ago now, so more recent memory. Well, it's a trailer for something that you did all those years ago. Let's have a look at this.
Jane!
Jane!
We had a similar case in last week. The heroin itself is impure.
That means somebody out there on the streets is poisoning their poison.
Yes.
Harry, for God's sake, that's not Robbie!
I told him he was a freak you ought to be after. Makes me describe him, then he beats me up and goes off.
What's the pusher's name?
They call him the gent. Looks like one too, a bowler hat, old school tie.
You have 1 second.
I swear, I don't know! Oh, God!
Return of the Saint.
Yes.
Ian Ogilvy and Christopher Timothy, I saw there as well.
That's right.
Full of
yes,
young
yes,
people again,
Yes.
as they were.
Interesting how he looks so much like Roger Moore in that, doesn't he?
Yeah, absolutely
Maybe
right.
a broadcast that.
Yeah. Now, would you say you're happiest in front of a camera or in front of a live audience? Both very different experiences.
It is
of
very
course.
different. It is really different. I've never ever really felt that I cracked the camera. There's some actors who have a relationship with a camera which just makes it work for them so well, doesn't it? Yeah. And I never ever felt I had that relationship. Whereas when I'm on stage, I feel I have that relationship with the audience.
Yeah.
I feel we're in it together.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's easier to do that because an audience is a living, breathing thing, and you're responding to each other. You play off each other when you're on stage so much. And I feel I could do that on stage. I picked up, the sense of the audience, and I could take them along, using that sense. Or if there's, and I never ever really got that from being in front of a camera.
And of course, you get a rehearsal process in the theatre.
Quite,
You get
yes.
four to 6 weeks of exploring your character and relationships and so on.
And not only that, you then get the opportunity to redo it over and over, when you're running it.
Yes.
Which is another whole learning experience again, in addition to the rehearsal period that you've had before.
Yeah, that's right. And as a director too, I think you've had a great deal of experience.
Yes.
Were you able to bring sort of best practices from directors you'd worked with on TV, or was it a
absolutely.
completely different beast as a director of theatre?
Best practices mainly from people I'd worked with on stage, but you learn everything. Or rather, you learn from every director, really. Whether it's Charlie Crichton or Ray Austin, or Charles Marowitz on stage or whoever. You learn what makes it work for them. Why is he a good director? And you sort of do this instinctively. You're not sitting there studying that. So that when it came for me to start directing, these are the things I drew on and thought, this is how you get people to work for you, because ultimately that's what you want.
Absolutely right.
People to actually work together as an ensemble and work for you.
Yeah.
And in Space 1999, for instance, one of the successful things about that is that they did get the cast to work as an ensemble.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And a lot must go down to Martin and Barbara for that as well, because they weren't playing the starstruck Hollywood, big wigs.
Yeah.
They were really embracing of people.
Wonderful.
And the guests which came in as well, and so on.
Yeah.
and that was also a really nice part of it, working with some of those guests who came in.
Oh, sure.
I mean, I didn't work with all of them, but Peter Bowles, I think I had scenes with. And my favourite one, of course, is Peter Cushing. I mean, he was just such a lovely, lovely person.
So we spoke briefly, I think, last time about, if you're a day player on something and the regular cast tend to be quite dismissive. The boot was on the other foot with you there. So you were able to be the kind of actor you would want.
Yes.
to welcome
But
you to
mind
set.
you, some of these people coming here are such big stars. I mean, you sort of sit down there and look up in awe.
Yeah. Now, just before we move on, let's have another opening of the Space 1999 lunchbox to see what our viewers and listeners have been sending in for you.
What we got here? We have one from Roger Morgan.
Mm-hmm.
Actors sometimes flesh out their characters and give themselves a backstory or expand their scenarios. Did you do this, or was it just turn up, read your lines, and off home?
Nothing wrong with that, by the way.
No. And when you do film and television, I think you tend to do the second version of that.
Yeah.
I think if you're doing a feature film and you've got a big part in there, you need to do a lot more study.
And what about Bob Matthias? Was it left to you to kind of bring your own backstory? Nothing was suggested to you?
Absolutely, yes. We never... I never ever had a discussion.
Right.
Not even a discussion. I never even had a suggestion from any of the directors about who or what Bob Matthias was.
But from your point of view, for security as an actor, did you have to know, or didn't it matter?
Well, yes, because I had to be consistent.
Uh-huh.
So I had to know what and who Bob Matthias was.
Yeah.
And also, as a trained actor, you tend to do that automatically anyway, don't you?
Yeah.
So you're then in a position to say to a director, if something really comes across which goes against everything that character is, you have to be able to say, well, hang on, would this guy really do that?
Yeah, and have the confidence to stand your ground as well, I suppose.
Well, yes and no. Yes and no. I don't think I was ever big enough to be able to stand my ground on something like that. But, people are open to listening to what you have to say. You come in and they've got their plans and how the scene is going to run. But if you say, well, look, can I do it this way instead? And they'll say, yes, that sounds good. Go ahead. So there's that, two-way exchange, which was really good.
Yeah. One more question, I think.
Let's see. This is from John Jackson. Were there any tensions or resistance to changes in season 2 of Space 1999 that you saw? What did you make of season 2 changes?
So we discussed that a little bit. Were you aware of how other people felt about it?
Well, there certainly wasn't any discussion on the set about it in the time that I was there.
Yeah.
But the entire atmosphere in the studio was so different to season 1 that going to work wasn't the pleasure that it had been in season 1.
Yeah.
Going to work was just turning up for work.
Yeah.
And it must have been the changes and the people who had dropped out of the series which brought that forward. Yeah. Because, none of us knew, I certainly didn't know, that we weren't going to have Victor Bergman and who else?
I see.
Some of the others who were dropped out of it. And so it came as quite a shock. And there wasn't any explanation. It's not that Barry didn't want to do it or anything like that. Mm-hmm. And that whole family feeling and feeling of being part of something special just didn't seem to be there in that tone.
Now I'm going to show you one more TV clip, but actually I think will lead us quite nicely into your work on the theatre, following your TV work, and particularly with Carib, which I'd like to talk to you about as well. So let's have a quick look at this.
Oh, Sergeant Jones.
Yes? Dr. Moore would like your advice. Yes. You see, last night, as I was driving to a patient in an emergency call-out,
I was stopped by 2 police officers. They searched me, didn't believe I was a doctor. It's the 4th time it's happened.
Doctor, if you want to make a complaint, you have to go to the station front desk. It'll be put in the incident book and get dealt with.
So you think I should make an official complaint?
Well, it's not up to me.
I don't know. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Maybe it was a genuine mix-up.
Could be.
Well, he wrote down the officer's number. But I thought maybe you could look into
If
it.
he feels strongly about it, he should go to the station and make a complaint.
But I just thought it would be better coming through you.
No. Not through me. Sorry.
Thought you said he was sympathetic.
But he's usually very helpful.
Policeman is a policeman. Whatever his colour, they look after their own.
I have no memory of that
Isn't that
at
funny?
all.
Yes. I would say just before we started playing that, Anton said, was I in this? 1992.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Dr. Moore.
As I said before, I play a lot of doctors.
There you go. Yeah, funny that, isn't it? So this, it was a particular episode was a complaint of sexual harassment by WPC against a black sergeant. Now, it was an episode of a hit TV show telling stories, in this case, perhaps not so much from a black perspective, but certainly from more of a sympathetic perspective, perhaps, towards black people in the UK. Did this, you say you can't really remember filming that, but did that chime with the sort of stories you wanted to start telling as a performer?
It's certainly stories which needed to be told, and still do. I mean, there's so many stories that we do have about life in this Britain. Never mind, about life in the various countries that we originated from, and we need to tell our own stories to our own people as well. It's interesting if you go into the West End of London, where the majority of the commercial theatres are. There are very few stories there which have anything to do with black people, and then they turn around and say, well, why don't black people ever go to the West End? It's because there's nothing that they have in common with anything. Yeah. Okay, more recently there have been things coming in. Yeah. Most notably of all, of course, is Hamilton. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen Hamilton.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
But what a brilliant
Amazing.
piece of theatre.
Absolutely.
So, and I suppose in a way that leads into why I started up a theatre company.
Yes. So tell me about Carib Theatre Company. What was the thinking behind that, and how did that happen?
Well, it is literally about what we're talking about. That I wasn't seeing anything which reflected my community on stage. Nothing was being offered. So then I started. I thought, well, there was Tallowa Theatre Company, which had been running for a few years. And then a theatre company called Black Theatre Cooperative started up. And this was started by a group of young black actors. And a friend of mine said, those people at Black Theatre Cooperative, they only ever employ themselves, they don't employ the rest of us. And I said, well, yes, that's why they started up the company, to employ themselves. In fact, if you envy them so much, why don't you start up a company? And then I thought, hang on, why don't I start up a company doing that?
I could do that, yes.
And so, I gathered a few people together, we talked about it, and eventually Carib Theatre came about, precisely to offer work to black actors, black writers, black directors, black stage management, the entire gamut of the profession.
And where were you performing? Touring or
wherever we could, because that was the other big problem. That the theatres, only fringe theatres, small theatres would even consider taking you in, which is pretty much still the case. So actually finding venues to then put on these plays was a big difficulty. One of the things which happened at the time is that the government of London changed, and Ken Livingstone became leader of the council, the Greater London Council. Yeah. And he had a much different attitude to what prevailed at the time. He was certainly against the status quo. And so I wrote to him. I just wrote to him, I said, what are you going to do about black theatre?
Right.
And he said, well, come in and talk to us about it, which I did. I went in, I saw a couple of his offices and explained, the situation that, there are a few black theatre companies around, but we have no venues. If we want to put on plays, we have to go and find some scout hut somewhere or a church hall, usually on the fringes of London, but certainly hardly anywhere in the centre of London. Yeah. So we need our own theatre. And they said the reply to that was, well, we're not going to give you a theatre because we're not acquiring any more property or anything, but we'll make sure you get access to places. And so we went to see the Arts Theatre, which is in Great Newport Street, right in, just off St. Martin's Lane, in the heart of Centre Theatre Land. And that led to what became the Black Theatre season. So for 3 months in the year, we would put on a series of plays, a series of productions funded by the GLC, and in a proper theatre with nice red seating, with a proper lighting box and sound and red curtains which drop in front and a proscenium. And you didn't have to go in and sweep the stage before you did the production, or your performing space, never mind the stage. So, and that just gave such a huge profile to Black and Asian theatre, because I invited Asian theatre companies to come in and take part in this as well. And, so for the first time, you could see a series of plays. We cut it down to 3 plays, so every month a new play would be on, which would expose the writing, which would expose the actors, which would give opportunities for all those workers, lighting designers, sound designers, costume people, to work on these plays.
Now, I know Wikipedia can't often be trusted, but there's a lovely quote here that says of you, his professional life has been dedicated to the promotion of black theatre, and to that end, Phillips started a number of projects that significantly changed the profile of Black and Asian theatre in Britain. That's something to be proud of, isn't it?
Yes, I am proud of that. And there are 1 or 2 things in Wikipedia which, as you said, are not exactly accurate. I think it said in Wikipedia that I'm the first black actor on television or something like that, which isn't true, of course. You had Rudolph Walker and Carmen Monroe and people like that on television before me. But one of the early ones, certainly. But to have taken on the whole theatre establishment, including the Arts Council of England, and in a way prevailed, is something that I am proud of, because a lot of people are now having the opportunity to practice their craft at their highest level, which didn't exist certainly when I started in theatre. And I think I've been a part of, that building structure, which has allowed them to, rise up higher and achieve things which certainly weren't possible. When I started, and for years, if they wanted to do a play which had, or television or a film, which had a major part for a black actor, they'd bring someone over from America. There's a film based in Northern Ireland with Stephen Ray, the name of which escapes me. But it's about the IRA, and they've taken a soldier as prisoner, and they have him as prisoner. And throughout the film, they have a conversation. His prisoner is having a conversation with this black soldier, and the conversation is about cricket.
Right.
And they had this black American actor who wouldn't know which end of a cricket bat to hold.
Doesn't ring true at all, does it? No, that's right. Yeah.
He was a very fine actor. So that but it just demonstrates that instead of casting any number of, they went to America and brought this person over.
The optimist in you must hope that one day it'll be job done.
Well, I don't know if it'll ever be a job done, but certainly progress has been made. But the one thing which I've learned is that if you take your foot off the gas, it comes to a dead stop, and suddenly you find yourself back where you started again, because that happened 2 or 3 times throughout my career, where you think, hey, we're on our way now, we're on the up. And so you go back to doing what you want to do, which is not politicking in theatre, but making theatre. And you turn around and you look, and suddenly you're right back where you started. The funding is gone. You get people talking about, oh, well, we don't need to fund black theatre anymore because it's all part of the mainstream. I think, well, which mainstream?
Yes, that's right.
Do the mainstream know that?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous, we're coming to an end now, Anton. We're just going to play another silly little game, which we call Mute, Cute, or Recruit. Now, do you know Snog, Marry, Avoid? Have you heard of that phrase before? Snog, marry, avoid. This is our version, a Gerry Anderson version. I'm going to show you 3 characters from the Gerry Anderson universe. Okay. Some of whom you might not know. So it's a gut feeling, really. We're trying to assemble some characters to make our very own international rescue. Right. And I want you to imagine that 3 people have popped up on your Facebook profile, and you have to choose between them. One to mute, in other words, to never hear from again. One who you think might be cute, but one to recruit for your organisation. Right. Let's see how we go. It's Robert the Robot. From 5XL5. Mute. Mute him. So we have 2 more to go. Either one who's cute and one to recruit for an organisation. It's Zero from Terrorhawks. Might come in useful. Do you think he's cute, or would you recruit him?
I'd probably recruit him.
Which means that you must think that Mitch the Monkey
is pretty cute.
He's pretty cute, I think you're right. But we add Zero the Zeroid to our fantastic international rescue team. Thank you very much for choosing. Now, just before you go, you need to take 3 random cards for our next guest. We won't see what they are until next time. That's it, you've got 3 there, I think. Right, that's fine, we don't need to look at those. I shall hand them over to our next guest, and they get to choose who is mute, who to mute, and who to recruit. Thank you so much, Anton. It's been an absolute personal pleasure to have you around the table here on the podcast.
Well, I've enjoyed it enormously. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Anton Phillips, everyone.